At $220, you know, you want it to feel really dang good. And I think that this has the ability to be that, but I think it'll depend on you. Today we got the ASICS Megablast first run. We're gonna go through 3 paces and see how it feels at an easy pace, kind of moderate, and then around 10K pace, see how it feels. Some stats to run through. It is 8.1 ounces for a men's sample size 9, and it's a whopping 45 millimeters of stack here. You just saw how much squish it has, an absolute crazy amount. We do not have any sort of plate in here, but the FF Turbo Squared is a top of the line foam. ASICS has done a great job implementing it for this and other shoes. So with that said, let's go ahead and get this on foot. We're gonna go ahead and get into our runs. We've got an easy, a moderate, and a fast pace. So we're gonna go very casual for our first one. Second one's gonna be a little slower than marathon pace, and our last mile is going to be at 10K pace. First initial feels, it just feels like a ton of cushion underfoot. Laces feel pretty good. Uppers, very lightweight feeling. Got about a half a thumb, so sizing should be pretty good here. Feels like there's plenty of space up here. Actually quite a lot. I've got a little bit of play on either end here. So if you have a wider foot, this might be an okay option for you. Definitely one of the more hyped up shoes this year, and we're gonna see if it's for good reason. So it feels pretty firm just on this first feel. Ooh, but as we push into it, that's got a lot of give. Feels like we might have to heel lock it. So you can see here, we're getting this extra little bit of space. I bet the heel lock fixes that though. So we're gonna go ahead and undo this knot and retie. For anybody who doesn't know, this is called the runner's loop. It is a way you can make a shoe feel way different. If you really like how a shoe feels, but it feels sloppy, if you do the runner's loop, it makes it feel way better. The laces seem to bite pretty well on each other, so I don't think you'll have any untying issues here, which is great. So you take up the lace that you want, so you get it kind of snug to where you want, and then you use this last eyelet right here. You run it back through the same side. It makes this little loop here. And you do the same on the other. So now you got 2 loops, and you go opposite sides. So left to right and right to left. And then you can pull side to side, and that gets you real locked into the shoe. Huge fan of doing it. I do it all the time. And now, look at that. Much less give here as I'm stepping down. We're gonna get a quick walk test. Initial impression, feels like there's a little slippage in the heel, even with the heel lock. Coming back, I don't know, feels like a good running shoe, feels bouncy. And with our walk test done, we're gonna go ahead and get to our first mile. I'm not sure if you're able to hear this the same way I am, but it feels like I'm just kind of slapping the ground, not getting a ton of response out of it yet, but we'll see as we keep going on here. Not that it has to be. All right, that's the first mile done. That was a 9:19. It was supposed to be around 10-minute pace, and it just felt kind of clunky. So I had some sections of that where we were running a little faster, and unsurprisingly, it felt a little better. Just felt kind of like slappy on the ground at the slower paces. So realized we got out a little bit too fast, slowed it back for the second half or so of that mile, and it just did not feel like it wanted to go very slow. But overall, it just felt kind of sloshy on the inside of the shoe. I don't have a particularly wide foot. That said, it's also not really narrow. Yeah, the upper just doesn't feel like it wants to stay on my foot real tight. That might have been because it was a slower pace and I'm not moving quite as fast through my gait or what have you, but We'll see how it feels on the next one. Next mile is about 8:30 pace. So a little faster, about a minute or so slower than marathon pace. We're gonna go ahead and get into this one, see if it feels a little better at a little faster pace. We'll see. So we're cruising here, right on pace for the second mile. One thing I'm noticing here is it does feel like it's a very stable platform. So for folks who feel like they want something fast-ish that's protective, but doesn't necessarily have like direct stability built into it, this would potentially be a good option as well. If anything, I have a tendency to supinate, so I push to the outside of my foot, if anything. But this is feeling pretty good, like a good stable platform, rolling through the middle of the shoe. Feeling pretty good about it. We'll see how it feels. I think it'll be exciting as we get up into that like half marathon pace. More on that in just a minute. Okay, so that's second mile done. Right where we wanted to be, 8:26 pace for that mile. And feels better. I don't know if I would necessarily say it's deserving of all the hype yet, but we're still going through it. We'll give it some more time to see how the last pace feels, see how that changes, how it interacts with the ground. What I'm thinking based on how it feels right now is that with some additional force going into it, it's going to get a lot more responsive. I tend to find with firmer foams, the more you put into it, the more you get back out of it, especially with the super foam like this. I think the additional pace, I kind of expect that. What's up? How are you? I also ran into my friend Michael here, so we actually got an extra mile in, running together, not really thinking about the shoe as much as talking about races that are coming up. And after that, I went right into my 10K pace rep. Clipping along at 6:48 right now. I'm really just hoping these have a break-in period. So far, just a little underwhelmed with how the shoe's responding off the ground. I'm definitely not the lightest runner out there. So for me to feel like I'm not getting the bounce back I want, I don't know. More testing to be done for sure. We'll finish this mile out, see if anything changes as we go along. All right, putting the camera down and getting into a good rhythm for that last half mile, I'm actually going to give it a lot more credit at that faster pace than I expected to. So I don't think this is very much like a heel strikey kind of shoe. It doesn't feel like it has the geometry to roll quite as much as you would want. If you're landing on like the heel, the back third of your foot. Now, what I will say is as I moved up on the forefoot there, it felt like a tremendous difference in how the shoe is set up. So as I got more to the forefoot with the shoe, felt like I landed in a way that compressed the foam and made it want to pop, as opposed to it just kind of being flat is I think the best way I can describe that heel strike feel. So when everything's feeling good and grand and stuff, I would like to be more midfoot. But when I'm going slow, I do have a tendency to move back to the back part of the heel. So I've heard, phenomenal things about the Megablast. I've heard other people say, I don't know if it's quite for me. At $220, you want it to feel really dang good. And I think that this has the ability to be that, but I think it'll depend on you, how you like to run, what feels good, what paces you're running. Because I felt like I was just at that 6:48 pace, starting to get some rebound, some life out of the shoe. And I just don't know if that's where everybody is at, Not everybody's putting that much force into the shoe. One of the other things I will say is when my cadence was lower, when I was taking less strides and putting more force into the ground that way, felt pretty good there too. So it really could be something where that extra force going into it makes it rebound a little more. Which brings me to my last thought of, I think that with some break-in, this is going to feel really good. Most shoes, honestly, I kind of expect to feel good going into it. Like the Salomon Aero Glide, for example, is great. The first time you put it on, it squishes and it feels bouncy, energetic, fun to run in. Where this one, it feels squishy when you're just kind of jamming your heel into the ground, but it doesn't feel like quite as propulsive at the more relaxed paces for whoever you are, right? So it doesn't have to be like fast or slow. It's more just like what's giving the shoe what it needs to rebound. All right, we are done with the run for today. Just some closing thoughts with the Megablast. The fit of the shoe, very accommodating. If you're somebody who needs some extra space in the shoe, I think this will provide it quite nicely. With it being straight lasted, like you can see here, not straight lasted, but with it being as wide as it is at the base, like right here across the middle, I think that's going to help out a lot of folks who need a little more stable platform. The feeling of the shoe overall was relatively firm. It was like a firm bouncy. So if that is something that you feel like you would like, I could see this being a great shoe for you. And then the folks who are up on their mid-foot, forefoot striking with this, I think it would be a great shoe to throw miles into. It feels very substantial underfoot, but not heavy. And one of the things I really did appreciate about how it felt as I was running is it is incredibly light given the stack height. You know, at 45 millimeters, sometimes those shoes start to get pretty chunky, like a Hoka Skyward X or a Hyperion Max. Those are going to be up towards 10 ounces plus, whereas this being down towards 8, you know, it's a nice feeling to not be like overwhelmed with weight. It was nice. We ran into one of my friends, Michael, and, you know, we were just going back and forth talking, so I wasn't necessarily thinking about the shoe quite as much. We settled into a pretty comfy pace, and it felt like a shoe you really could use as almost a one-shoe rotation. As I said, as I was doing that stride, I was getting up faster paces. It was willing to be bouncy and fun and poppy, but it feels protective enough at the lower paces that you're able to get a bunch of miles in it, I bet. I want to put more miles in it myself, but I do have a gut feeling this is going to last a long time. That's what I find is the shoes that are more dense feel like they just stay together longer. The Novablast feels like it just would kind of squish down and die relatively quickly. I know a lot of people love the way it feels, where the Megablast, I think, has the same or better pop feeling, but with a more substantial, I think, longer lasting foam, if I have to guess. So that does beg the question, how does the Novablast stack up against other kind of super shoes that maybe do have a plate? If that's interesting to you, check out this video here and we'll dive straight into it.